Where do you begin a story? Most of us start at the beginning, but many writers know it can be gripping to start in medias res. Maybe you can hook your audience by beginning at the end. There's another option. What about beginning before a story has even started? Sometimes an audience needs context before you can start telling your tale. This is how to write a prologue. First, our own brief prologue. Subscribe to Studio Binder and enable notifications to stay in the know on all things filmmaking. Now, let's begin.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
You've likely heard the term prologue.
But what does it mean?
Today, a prologue refers to a sequence that appears at the beginning of a narrative, but the events of which are typically temporally distinct from the primary story. This may mean centuries before, a few days before, or even years after. The word derives from the Greek prologos, which translates to before speech. In Greek tragedies, prologues were a standard part of a play's structure and typically was purely for exposition. In Elizabethan dramas, the use for prologues expanded and were often used to introduce a story's themes. Both Greek tragedies and Elizabethan dramas usually had these introductions delivered through monologues.
Macbeth hath come. Aye. In a sieve I'll did a sail. And like a rat without a tail, I'll do, and I'll do. I'll drain him, dry as hay.
Prologues are also common in literature, used as far back as the Canterbury Tales, which uses a general prologue to introduce the group of pilgrims and the storytelling competition that prompts them to weave the tales that make up the rest of the text. It should come as no surprise, then, that prologues can also be found in movies. In screenplays, prologues are typically formatted similarly to any other scene, though a writer can choose to explicitly indicate the time jump in the scene heading, or through on-screen text. Most writers have heard the advice to start your story sooner rather than later in order to keep your audience engaged. A prologue flies in the face of the adage, and as such, a writer should carefully consider whether they need a prologue, and if it's serving the purpose it needs to.
By morning, the Atreides were no more. All died in the dark.
We'll look at some of the most common purposes a storyteller may have for a prologue, beginning with world building.
Man would keep to the cities, and the magical beings would own the forests.
C'est incroyable!
And Incrediboy!
World-building prologues are immensely popular in science fiction and fantasy films, where a filmmaker needs to establish the rules of a setting without being able to rely on an audience's outside knowledge.
Well, not every superhero has powers, you know. You can be super without them.
Sometimes these types of prologues can be as simple as directly telling an audience the relevant information about the world. Though there are many famous and effective examples of this method, it can also risk alienating or overwhelming an audience.
In this time, the most precious substance in the universe is the spice melange.
So it is best to keep these forms of prologues brief, or to combine them with something more immediately captivating. In The Terminator, for example, the audience is thrown into an attention-grabbing futuristic wasteland and are given important world information through text afterwards. World-building prologues do not have to be so explicitly expository. 28 Days Later, for example, has a gripping opening sequence that establishes the world, but doesn't give the audience all the answers.
The chimps are infected!
We simply know that a dangerous contagion is spreading. Starship Troopers, meanwhile, opens with a fake advertisement.
Young people from all over the globe are joining up to fight for the future.
I'm doing my part.
This gives an overview of the film's universe while also introducing the movie's anti-jingoism satire.
To ensure the safety of our solar system, Klendathu must be eliminated.
When creating a world-building monologue, remember to have trust in your audience. Give them enough information so that they aren't completely lost, but withhold information that isn't immediately necessary. This builds intrigue while avoiding an overwhelming deluge of information.
The Dark Lord Sauron forged in secret a master ring to control all others.
Another common function for a prologue is the character introduction. Most films introduce characters as their stories get underway. But sometimes a prologue is required to establish a person or people before the plot starts churning.
This is me at my most masochistic.
Bill, it's your baby.
For films following a large ensemble, a prologue can help situate an audience so that they aren't confused as the plot unfolds.
5-time Academy Award winner Kirk Lazarus, Satan's Alley.
This approach can be seen in The Royal Tenenbaums, where Wes Anderson takes time to give viewers the background on each Tenenbaum family member and friend.
Well, did you at least think the characters were well developed?
What characters? There's a bunch of little kids there dressed up in animal costumes.
Good night, everyone.
This prologue also establishes different relationship dynamics.
This is my adopted daughter, Margot Tenenbaum.
Which in turn give the story nuance and depth right as it begins.
Are you getting divorced?
At the moment, no. But it doesn't look good.
A character introduction prologue can also be useful for intensely character-driven movies. A prologue gives a filmmaker time to reveal a protagonist to the audience without the pull of the primary plotline. In Erin Brockovich, for example, the opening has nothing to do with the story's arc, but it gives us a strong understanding of who Erin is and where she comes from.
Yeah, I'm an extremely fast learner. You show me something in a lab once, and I've got it down.
She's smart and a striver, but has never been given the chance to prove it.
Look.
In the shadows of Arrakis lie many secrets, but the darkest of them all may remain. The end of House Atreides.
Character prologues can also be used to build intrigue by introducing a character who won't appear until later in the film. This technique is most common with antagonist introductions, showing the audience the big bad's capabilities that the main character will eventually have to go up against. In The Dark Knight, for example, the prologue gives us a first glimpse of the Joker and illustrates his cunning and ruthlessness. This means that once the story begins, the audience is anxiously awaiting the villain to reappear and challenge the protagonist.
What do you believe in?
I believe whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you
stranger.
This kind of character introduction can also be more ambiguous, building intrigue by not revealing what role a character will end up playing in a narrative. In Saving Private Ryan, the prologue is a powerful depiction of the impact World War II continues to have decades after its end. The audience isn't told who this character is. We only know that he is somehow connected to the lives lost during the war. It isn't until the film's end that the answer is provided. Prologues can also be used as a tone setter. Prologues can give an audience a taste of what's to come that may not be possible to do in a film's first act. In other words, a prologue can deliver on what the audiences came to see before the story then needs to take its time to set things up.
Just keep on walking, bro. Don't do nothing stupid. Just keep on.
Jurassic Park, for example, opens with a riveting and nerve-wracking sequence that delivers on the promise of the movie's premise. Dinosaurs are here, and they are dangerous. On the page, the writing is detailed and menacing, instantly building intrigue.
Everybody, hands up, keep it clear. Keep it clear.
This captivating opener affords Steven Spielberg and writers Michael Crichton and David Koepp time to slow things down to introduce the characters and the island, without having to worry about losing the viewer's interest.
Block the opening! Don't let it get out!
The Matrix has a prologue which operates similarly. The Wachowski sisters tease the audience with their groundbreaking fight scene chops before settling into the main story with Neo.
Yeah, that's me.
Prologue's tone-setting function is why they are so popular in horror movies. An opener outside the rest of the story allows a filmmaker to be free to terrify the audience, then kill off characters unconnected to the narrative to establish the stakes.
I love you, baby.
After this initial scare, the audience will be on edge for the otherwise innocuous setup that follows.
Hey, Mia.
I'll be damned. You actually came.
Movies with a very distinct tone may use a prologue to get the audience acclimated before the plot starts unfolding. In Crybaby, for example, John Waters uses an extended musical prologue to establish his signature absurdist and campy mood. By the time the musical number is over, we're prepared for the over-the-top performances and plot that follow.
Let me punch his ugly face!
It's okay, Hatchet. You're beautiful, baby.
It can be a world builder, a character introduction, and a tone setter. A prologue can do it all, and is much more than an appendage tacked onto the beginning of a movie. After all, you need good reason to delay telling your story. Don't delay writing your story, and get started today with Studio Binder's screenwriting software. That's the end of this epilogue, which is a story for another time.